Hey there, this is Ben Botkin. Today I want to talk about a new library from Orchestral Tools called Andea, which is a collection of Central and South American instruments by Richard Harvey. And it's pretty extensive in the number of instruments that it offers, many of which I've never heard of before. Um, but anyway, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what's included in the library, some ways you might use it, whether you're doing more authentic ethnic music or doing something different. And I also want to break down this piece of music I've written here just a little bit and see if we can extract some tips that you might be able to apply to your own compositions. So to begin this time, let's just go ahead and play this demo that I wrote. And this one is called Moonscape. So here we go. All right, that is the piece. So when Orchestral Tools asked me to write a demo for this, they said, here's what this is. It's a bunch of authentic instruments. Basically, well, I'll just overview the library briefly. It has 11 plucked string instruments from Central and South America, 18 flutes, panpipes, and ocarinas, 32 percussive objects, and authentic representations of the instruments, including only natural legato range for those wind instruments. So you don't have every chromatic note for every flute. They would just record the notes that instrument's actually able to recreate naturally. And it's also recorded dry with 4 mic positions for, I think, every single patch. So that's kind of a lot. That's an awful lot of instruments, and some of them sound kind of similar to each other. To my untrained, not noticing a lot of the differences between these instruments' ears, but it does mean there's a lot of, if you're looking for a very specific instrument or variety of instruments from these regions, then this is probably going to have an awful lot of stuff. It really would be an invaluable resource if you were doing something like a South American travel documentary or something like that. But when I wrote this demo, Orchestral Tools asked me, can you try to do something that's not particularly, ethnically authentic? We're not really trying to do that style, but how we want to show composers how they can use this library in a more modern context and maybe in some different styles. So that was the angle that I went with, and I had also just seen Dune by Hans Zimmer. I mean, it's not by Hans Zimmer, but since I'm a composer, I say Star Wars by John Williams. I say Dark Knight by Dark Knight by Hans Zimmer. So it was Dune by Hans Zimmer, and I was kind of thinking of this otherworldly kind of soundscapes that he'd made, and I thought, oh, this might be cool to do something kind of like that. This piece of music that you just heard is very ambient and wet, and that's all effects that I added, and I'll get into those in a little bit. But like I mentioned, this library is naturally very dry. And I think that's actually best because it probably, I imagine it makes the legato scripting easier, and the legatos are very clean, very smooth. But it also means you can use it in many different contexts. You can kind of add whatever effects, whatever reverb to it that you want. So let's see here what I have. I'm gonna just open up a player here and briefly look at some of what is going to be included here. Plucked strings. Okay. By the way, I'm still working with a beta of the library, so some of the labeling may not be exactly the same as the final version. I really hope. I hope that that's not too confusing. So taking a look at plucked strings here, there's a wide variety of different ones. Charango, Ronroco, I don't even know what that is. It's plucky, acoustic guitar, a harp, a guitaron, and I know I'm pronouncing these incorrectly, a ukulele, and the spread of articulations is fairly basic. Here's actually, I mean, not basic, it's fairly consistent between, from one instrument to the other. It almost feels like overkill, but I know it won't be overkill for the people who are looking for exactly this. There's so many different options. Winds, flutes, all kinds of flutes, panpipes, ocarinas, and then we get to percussion. There's an awful lot. There's an awful lot of material here. So it's kind of a specialist library. It's kind of niche, but it's incredibly thorough if you're looking for this niche. So let's just play with a couple of the instruments. At present, let's see. Let's take this one. I've got an echo and a reverb on it. Let's turn some of that off. Where are we? I'm also getting a little bit of static. I don't know why. We got chromatic sustains, non-chromatic sustains, portato long, portato shorts, which Orchestral Tools often provides those, staccatos, bends. So you can hear how dry the library is without any effects on it. Trills. Well, chords. Dead notes. And I'm not going to... Tremolo chords. Chord staccato. There's a huge amount of material here. I'll go back to sustains chromatic for this one. And I'll turn my... I'm going to turn my my delay back on. You could use that kind of sound in many different contexts, modern film, hybrid, and there's a lot I could say. I should probably try to streamline this to the most important points. Let's see here. The flutes are nice. So a lot of the plucked instruments are kind of like what I just showed you, but with different sounds. Those have delays on it too. Acoustic guitar. Oh, no, that's the. actually a pretty nice acoustic guitar. And then a ton of effects, chords. I'm not going to make everything great to do a walkthrough. I'm sure Orchestral Tools is going to have their own walkthrough that gets into all that, so I'm not going to bother. Berimbau. And everything you heard in this demo was by Andea except for one synth patch, which is massive. I mean, it's the synth massive, but it's also massive sounding. And that kind of fills out the sound of this. But this piece is very textural, for sure. Flutes, I'll play some of the flute legato flutes real quick. I want not all of them because there's tons, just to show you a little bit about how the legato sounds and behaves. Now this one here actually is chromatic. Really nice, really nice. There's a lot of material that's kind of like that. Native American flute, let's take a look at that. But as you can see here, it's not chromatic. So you've only got a certain number of pitches represented, which would be the natural range of that instrument. Really nice stuff. I'll play a couple of the other articulations for this flute just to show. These sustains are chromatic. We got some ornaments. I've got a cathedral reverb on here, so it's not going to give this, it's only going to show this library from a particular angle, which is a little more ambient and cinematic, but that just gives you a flavor of what some of the flutes are like, some of the flute legatos. And there's some really nice timbres and sounds across the flutes, because there's like 10 flutes. And then there's panpipes as well. And again, various articulations, various different kinds of sustains, different kinds of longs and shorts. What is this even? Where is it? It's somewhere on. Cool sounds, cool textures. Noise. This one kind of repeats. I don't know if it's tempo synced or if it just happens to be the right tempo for my piece here. Then there's a whole bunch of percussion. I don't have it all loaded. I just picked out a few. I picked out a nice low. A high, metal shaker. And then this is actually one of the plucked instruments, but it's a bunch of sound effects like tapping on the instrument and stuff. So it's percussive, and I've got some delay on that. So let's listen to just some percussion here. Let's listen to just some flutes. Winds. I don't know if that's, I think it may have the wrong key switch triggered at the moment. Very Mandalorian-esque. Some of those are low, that Native American flute there. One of the things that might be really nicely applicable, it's not the right term, might be easily usable in a modern context is just all of these different plucks. So what I have here is I have a bunch of plucks with delays on and with long reverbs and a little bit of additional processing I might get into. But let's listen to just some of these plucked strings. Whatever that is, I don't know what that is. So you see, you can build some really nice textures. You got really great, nice ingredients to make a bunch of different kinds of textures. You got some really evocative, unusual stuff in the woodwinds. A lot of different. Getting a call. Hopefully that's not important. Is it important? I don't think it's important. Not important enough to stop my live stream. Well, it's not a live stream. My video. Not important enough to stop my video, which is getting long. I'm getting stuck in the weeds here. Let's see. I had a few notes to keep me sort of semi on track, so this doesn't become overly overlong. I mean, it's already going to be a little bit overlong. Yeah, so that's a little bit about what's included. What is this library good for? Well, in my opinion, if you need this particular highly detailed, highly extensive spread of instruments for like if you're doing some music for the region and you want it to be authentic, then I don't know of another library that's as in-depth as this. Just the variety of panpipes, the variety of flutes, the variety of different kinds of plucked instruments and percussion. There's an awful lot there. But as we mentioned, it could also be used in some, more modern contexts, especially you add effects, add delays, reverbs, things of that nature. Or in this piece, for example, since there are so many unusual tones, unusual sounds, and like woodwind effects, it's nice to kind of create a whole new sonic world with. So it might be nice for science fiction or many other kinds of writing where you need a flavor that's unique and it's not a very familiar sound. Well, there's a lot of sounds in here that are, especially in the woodwinds, I think, that are not super familiar. They're a little unusual, but everything is organic. So it's got that organic feeling. It's got that organic quality to it. But it's definitely a specialized library. It's probably not, well, this just tells you something about how I buy libraries. It's not the sort of library I would just buy because it's cool, but I would buy it if I needed it for one of those purposes. And I should probably mention that the reason why I have this library is because, I guess that's obvious, but I was a demo composer. So, take that how you will, however you view that affecting my view of the library. But if I was doing something where I needed this level of detail and these instruments, then this would be definitely the library to get for that, at least as far as I'm aware of the libraries that are out there. Now, I did want to say, I said maybe we could break the piece down a little bit and I could share a few observations that might be helpful to you in your own compositions, now that we've talked about the library some. First off, I just wanted to say harmonically, I was thinking I want to do something that feels unusual. It feels kind of otherworldly, but harmonically what we have here is actually very, very simple. So where's it? Let's open up a couple of these. Wait, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so it's, nope. Getting a little bit of static, I don't like that. So it's basically, you've got your root note in the bass. Like the whole piece is basically, it's got this kind of shape. It just has crescendo, it builds up to the climactic moment, and then it comes down, and that's it. And you have a sustained drone, a low note that just stays. You can't see it that well. I usually work in 4K and I shrink it down to 1080p, and it's hard to fit it all in. It's just holding that root note this whole time until we have our big climactic moment where we have our chord shift. And then we just get like a straight E major chord. But what do we have going on top of that? We've got, this is our A, we're in A major. We have, oops, I don't want you. Nope, I don't want you. Fifth descending, which feels a little primitive, a little unusual to begin with, because it's not good harmony in the traditional sense. And that sound right here. So you've got an A, like a fifth from A to E, and then F sharp to C sharp. Also a bit of an unusual sound. So this progression. So it has some tension, and we repeat that, and then when we get to our climactic moment, we go from, and we get a resolve to not actually the chord that is the most obvious to come next, but if I reinforce it strong enough, it can really feel like the right next move, and also a little bit of a surprise. So we go from the tension. We want that resolve. We want it to resolve, and then we give it a full straight triad, a resolution, and then that just sustains through the rest of the piece. So harmonically, all it is just, and then E major. That's the whole piece, and then it's just textures and sounds over that and repeats. But that's all it is. It's very simple harmonically, but it also feels unusual because of the harmonic choices that I made. What else did I want to say? I took notes here, so actually it wouldn't take too long, and it might be some helpful stuff here. Oh yeah, one thing that's nice to do, like when you get a new library, it's nice to take a little bit of inventory of kind of what you have to work with. In this case, because I was trying to make a demo out of only this library as much as I could, except for the synth. I'll sort of go through a library and I'll say, what high sounds do I have? What low sounds do I have? What elements are percussive? What elements can be melodic? Do I have any cool effects I might want to sprinkle? And that's something I like to do sometimes, is when I have a piece, try to find a couple of little instrumental effect sounds that I can, it's not randomly, but essentially you kind of, in a way that feels random, sprinkle them throughout the piece in various places. And that can add a little bit of realism. Sometimes maybe you have a little pre-recorded melodic phrase, which sounds real because it is real, or some little effect, some strumming effect. put a few of those here and there, and that just can add a little bit of authenticity, a feeling of authenticity, a feeling of variety. So here at the very beginning, I've got a little ding, a little slide. If I select just my plucked strings, and that's this guy right here. And he starts off the piece, and he appears a couple other times. I've also got this acoustic guitar. Got a few of those thrown in, just kind of basically to add interest, just to add texture, add color. And the placements of those is actually kind of random, but in context of the whole piece, I actually liked what it added. So let's hear that moment. So I guess you might say that's tip one. Sprinkle some instrumental effects throughout the piece here and there. It can just add color. It can add realism or a sense of realism. Another thing that I think is helpful is to think if your piece in terms of high, middle, and low regions. At least I find that helpful. So here I knew I want stuff at the high end, I want stuff in the middle, and I want stuff down at the low end. So part of that taking inventory is actually going through and saying, what do I have that can do the job of the bass? And I've got a few things. My low instruments are basically this guitar on, this low guy, this cajita coplera, however you pronounce that correctly. And that's all the low end that we have other than in the synth. But I want something that represents that low end. So I had to find, what do I have to work with that can be represented in that low end? Because if I want fullness, and a satisfying fullness, I'm going to want the low end represented. So I'll find what I want in the low end. What do I want in the mid range? Well, there's a lot of things going in the mid range, but low end is often one of those places where I have to be particular and say, who's on bass? Who's doing bass? How's it going to fit into the mix? So those were a couple of the elements I had. Another thing, this is a general principle of instrumentation or orchestration that doesn't just apply to the orchestra, but really any context. And this should only be used as a rule of thumb. I think if you use this as an absolute rule, it would be probably disastrous in a lot of contexts. But I find it's generally helpful to me. And that is when you have a part of a piece of music that is generally softer, generally mellower, find samples and dynamics of instruments that are more mellow, that are more soft. So like if this part of the piece is like mezzo piano, it's MP, you probably don't want to stick any FF samples in there, even if you turn down the volume, because the difference in tonal quality, the difference in timbre is so extreme that really feels like it pokes out. So in this piece of music, it's kind of just, it starts kind of slow and mellow and it gets more intense and a little more nasal and bright in the textures because I wanted that at the climactic moment. So this is part of that taking inventory. One of the things I did is, as I'm going through the samples, I identified some of them have a really brilliant, really aggressive characteristic. And I thought, ooh, I know where I want to use those. I want to use those when the piece gets intense. So we have a few elements here. I think it's this guitar strum. Yeah, bright. It would probably feel out of place in the beginning, even if I turned it down, and it would stick out in a way that I don't really want an effect or background element to stick out. If it was melody, I think I could probably let it be at a higher dynamic than everything else by a little bit. But in general, when you have the dynamic level of your instruments more or less the same, I find that it creates a more pleasing whole. And that's not just a volume thing. Obviously, the volume has to be balanced, but I'm talking about use appropriate dynamics for the dynamic point of your piece. I also have this Berimbau, if that's how you pronounce that. Forgive every bad pronunciation of mine in this whole video. I beg of you. Also very harsh, very nasal. I think I felt like it would have been out of place here in the beginning of the piece, which is warmer. Same with the metal shaker. Oh yeah, on my basses, I also had these guys. Maybe I didn't mention that. So yeah, take inventory of your highs, your middles, your lows. Throw in some effects here and there. Just keep things interesting, keep things real. Shake it up. Be aware of where you have harsher and mellower tones in your dynamics, and use appropriate samples there. One other thing I want to mention, and I'll look at the synth line for this. This has nothing to do with Andea, the library. But take a look at what I've got going on here with modulation. So a principle here is when you have a sustained element, and really any kind of sustained element like sustained strings, a synth line, any kind of drone, an ambience, or something like that, again, this is one of those general rules or rules of thumb that I find that whenever I do it, it makes things better. I don't know, you should always do it, but have it moving, have it either getting louder or getting softer all the time. So, and in addition to louder or softer, which right here, I'll open up the automation lane, and you can see there's a little bit of variation in volume. And this is just strictly volume. But in here on this massive synth, there's also variation in mod wheel, which is controlling a bunch of things like a cutoff filter, a few different filters, and it's changing the timbre of the synth itself, similarly to how a real instrument would change timbre as it becomes louder, becomes more intense. So let's listen to a little bit. This sort of thing doesn't take very long to program. And even if you just did like straight line, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, every 2 or 4 bars, and then just generally get higher at your more climactic points in the piece, even that much of a variation in a non-static sound can give it a feeling of life and motion where the sound is evolving. So yeah, there's no good reason to have static sustains. And one cool thing you can do, I don't have it demonstrated here, is when you have a sustained texture, like maybe a couple different synth sounds. Let's just say you had one here. Well, no, maybe I'll just demonstrate real quick. Let's put this here. Let's simplify it. Let's delete everything except. Let's just get one. Let's just do like that. One thing you can do is if you have like one synth sound and another synth atmosphere and another one, you can have them overlapping and then having their highs and low moments like this, have them invert each other, if that's the right term. So basically this one comes down when this one goes up, this one goes up when this one comes down, and that creates, even if the volume is fairly equal, it can create a sense of moving and evolving sound quality, because you're not just getting this one, you don't have just this guy getting more intense than softer. You've got this one's doing the same thing in opposite. So at certain points, the sound might be a higher pitched sound. At certain times, it might be a little bit mellower, or it might have a little bit of a gravelly something. But you don't want things to be static. You always want things to be moving, evolving. And that's one of the most common weaknesses I hear in people who are starting out using sampled instruments, virtual instruments, is static dynamics, static sustains, and it just, you really feel it and you really hear it. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. It's a pretty simple little piece. It's just mostly atmosphere, texture, a few harmonic decisions. But as you can tell, some simple harmonic choices, when they're filled out with a bunch of flavors and a bunch of colors, can be very interesting, even if it's not very much at all. Even if all it is just as the whole piece. So maybe use that principle when you plan your own pieces, to think, it doesn't necessarily have to be Bach toccata and fugue. It doesn't have to be harmonically complex. A simple idea might be all that's necessary, and then you build it out over time. You build it out with various elements and various repeating sections and stuff. So that's it for today. I feel like that was a really convoluted and long video. Hopefully there was some stuff in there that was helpful to you, whether you have Andea or are interested in Andea or not. If you are interested in Andea, I also hope it was helpful to you. Go check it out. Go to the Orchestral Tools website and see if it's a good fit for you and for your needs. But for sure, if you need to do anything South American, Central American sounding, and you need those elements, it's got tons. And there's a lot of detail in this library. It's just a really tremendous toolkit. But as I showed, you can use it for some other things as well. So thanks for watching. And I guess what I'm supposed to say at the end of the video is click like or subscribe if you like the video and you want to watch more videos in the future. Also, if you want, I have an educational site called Forte Composer Academy, and I've got some courses, some various educational resources there you might be interested in. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, you might be interested in. If you didn't, you probably aren't going to be interested, but then you did watch to the end of this video, didn't you? All right, I'm going to sign out, and I'll look forward to talking to you all next time we look at a new library, next time we look at a piece of music. So happy composing. That was cheesy.